Good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, July 21st, 2015 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let me remind commissioners, make sure your microphone is lighted when you're speaking, and please speak into the microphone for the record. And we'll call roll. Commissioner Anderson.
Present.
Commissioner Berenson.
Here.
Commissioner Bowie. Commissioner Crane.
Here.
Commissioner Fizer.
Present.
Commissioner Meiske.
Present.
Commissioner Sarsfeld. Mayor Kirchhoff.
Here.
And Commissioner Faulkner is present. We do have a quorum. And no personal appearances this evening. One item on our consent agenda, which is acceptance of minutes from our July 7th, 2015 meeting. If there are no concerns about the minutes, I would entertain a motion either to accept minutes of our July 7th meeting or to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
move that we
Commissioner Anderson.
accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, sorry. Mayor Kirchhoff? Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Anderson, second by Mayor Kirchhoff to accept consent agenda as presented. And for the record, let me note that Commissioner Bowie has come in and we still have a quorum. So all those in favor of the motion to accept consent agenda as presented, raise a hand, please. 2, 3. Okay, I was waiting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. And that's 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. We have nothing this evening under old business, so that takes us directly into new business. And our first case this evening is case 15014, the Taco Bell site plan, Raymore Market Center Lot 2. And if the applicant is present here tonight, if you'd like to come forward to the podium and present your case, we'd be happy to meet you. And give us your name and address for the record. Name anyway.
Jim Anderson. I'm with Caldwell Engineering. The address is 14700 West 115th Street. 114th Terrace in Lenexa, Kansas.
Thank you.
Carmen Onken with GLNV. Onken is the last name. 1525 East Douglas, Wichita, Kansas.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
We'd like to request approval of our site plan application.
Mm-hmm.
We accept staff's comments and would like to proceed.
Okay. Mr. Cataret, do we want to talk about materials now, later?
Go
Good.
ahead and talk about it now.
Good time?
Yeah.
Sure. If you wouldn't mind, we're always interested to see what's in the plan. And we can pass things if you don't mind, and talk with the slides as we're going.
I have a second one. It doesn't have the brick on it, though.
Right. Well, and I think that's pretty similar to our plan on the monitors, isn't it? Okay.
Yep.
But the samples are always like things that I can touch.
The colors being sent around will have both the clematis on it. It has the brown, the rookwood clay, and then it also has the 2 brick colors that we will be using in order to meet compliance with the city requirements for this local area. It's a standard Taco Bell prototype. Other than that, it has the slat wall design, the brick exterior with the standard storefront materials
So
as far as the dining room.
is this a fairly recent design prototype?
They came out with it about a year ago.
Okay,
It does have the screening of the rooftop units. Other than that, like I said, it is pretty well prototypical for Taco Bell.
okay. It looked a little more modern than I've seen.
Yeah, it hits more the millennial times and things like that on what they're looking for.
Mhm.
A little bit away from the traditional.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to tell us?
I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Yeah. Commissioners, do you have any questions at this time? Otherwise, we'll move on to the staff report. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Mr. Cataret, if you would, give us the staff report on case 15014, please.
Yes, sir, thank you. The proposed Taco Bell site that is before you tonight, to give you a general location, and for anybody listening, the proposed site is at the northeast corner of Foxwood Drive and Johnston Parkway. It's technically Lot 2 of the Raymore Market Center, shopping center, so it's right in front of the Price Chopper. It's one of the 4 outlots that are part of the Raymore Market Center. And the proposed use again is a drive-through fast food restaurant, Taco Bell. I included aerial photograph just to show the general location of the property. It's a property photograph to give you the general layout of the property, the staff report. The property is zoned our C3 commercial, which is our regional commercial, does allow the use as a permitted use. The property is a little over 38,000 square feet in size. The proposed building is approximately 2,000 square feet in size. It will have 40 customer seats in the customer service area. The site plan did include, the staff report did include the site plan review requirements for the Planning Commission to consider this evening, including the findings of fact that you'll have to make. The Raymore Market Center Shopping Center first started with the Price Chopper, was actually opened back in 2008. So the center's been open for a number of years. The retail center that's attached to the Price Chopper is fully leased out. So now we're left with the outlots to be developed. This is the first of the outlots to be developed. Mr. Eanes submitted the engineering memorandum, talks about the provision of facilities to the site. That's included in your packet. Under staff comments, they gave the general development standards applicable to the site. Being a restaurant, there are specific special use conditions that have to be met. And since it does have a drive-through facility, there are certain drive-through requirements that were required to be met, and they have complied with all those requirements. They are providing over the minimum number of parking spaces. They're showing a total of 25 spaces on the site, and the site is interconnected with the parking area for the Price Chopper. So if there was a need for overflow parking, the Price Chopper lot is also available, but they do exceed our requirement. They also exceed our landscaping requirement. It's a fairly large lot, so when you looked at the landscape plan, there's quite a bit of landscaping along Johnston Drive and along Foxridge Drive. So they are exceeding our requirement. As was indicated, the building's design is compliant with our standards and our ordinance. They have provided a pedestrian access as required to the site. They have a sidewalk connection from the front of the restaurant, the main entrance to Foxwood Drive, 58, a sidewalk. There's also a sidewalk that would provide connectivity to the Price Chopper facility as well. The master signage plan was submitted. The plan did not show a monument sign as far as the detail. It showed a general location for a monument sign. It did show the proposed signage on the building facade. But as I always state, we show signage simply for illustration purposes. Signage is never approved as part of the site plan. They would have to submit that separately. I have talked to the sign contractor already for the project to give them the city code requirements. Fire district reviewed the site plan as required. They didn't have any specific issues with the site. They feel they can fully serve the site. It has good access. They always note that a separate permit's always required for the South Metro. So we have a city building permit, and we have a fire district permit issued. Stormwater management. The stormwater flow from this property is captured in an underground system, and it's released to Johnston Lake. So when the shopping center was developed, it anticipated development of all the outlots. So it's already been addressed as part of the design for the entire site. And again, Johnston Lake is a detention basin for this project. They are also providing stormwater treatment in accordance with our new ordinance. This is the second commercial site that falls under that ordinance. And they are providing a couple of different means for treating the stormwater. They're going to have some rain gardens within the islands, the landscape islands. And they'll also have a treatment unit in the storm inlet, the storm drainage inlet. Mr. Eads can explain that certainly much better than I can. But I can simply state that they are compliant with our stormwater treatment ordinance. The site lighting plan's in compliance. They show the parking light poles within the landscape islands, and then also along the drive-through lane. There'll be 25-foot poles, 90-degree cutoff fixtures, so it's fully compliant with our code. The trash enclosure location and specifications are compliant. The site is accessed, as you know, from the internal network of the shopping center, so there's no access to either 58 or Johnston Drive directly from the site. You do have to go through the entrance in front of Price Chopper to gain entrance to this facility. Staff submitted proposed findings of fact for your consideration, and staff recommendation, we do recommend that the commission accept those findings and approve the site plan for Taco Bell. We did identify a total of 13 conditions as part of our recommendation. Those conditions are met at certain trigger points throughout the developments. Some of the conditions would be prior to commencement of land disturbance activities, some before issuance of permit, and then others, prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy. But we have reviewed those conditions with the applicant. So that would conclude staff report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Cataract. This case doesn't require a public hearing, and I might remind the commission that in the case of site plans, the Planning and Zoning Commission is the approving authority. So our decision is, let's just say it's important. And having said that, I'll open the floor for discussion by the commissioners. Questions, comments?
I just got a quick
Commissioner
question.
Bowie?
Yes, thanks. What is the separation between the parking lot and the new facility? Is there going to be something set up, or is it all going to run together? I couldn't quite figure that out from looking at the plans. Meaning, if we look to the east of the planned site here, we know that's the parking lot of Price Chopper. So what is planned to separate the two between the parking lot and the Price Chopper itself? Is there not going to be anything there, or is there going to be an island of some sort there, or what?
There won't be a physical separation between the Taco Bell parking spaces, if you would, and the driveway aisle and the parking spaces in front of Price Chopper. This particular aerial photograph has the site plan overlaid. And so what you're seeing is there's an access aisle already existing for the spaces that currently exist for Price Chopper. That would also be the access aisle to serve the entrance to the parking lot, the entrance to the drive-through. But also you'd be able to pull into the parking spaces on the Taco Bell site. So it is a shared access drive between the Taco Bell site and the Price Chopper site. So, and it was intended to be that way. There is no specific curb line along that parking lot today because it was planned to be accessed from this outlot.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Same concern along the same line there is, my concern here is that, which is quite common with many Taco Bells, is that I call it as a trap, drive-through trap. So looking at on the west side of the building, that once you actually enter, there's really no egress out of the location unless you actually get your order and leave, as opposed to if the customers may want to change their mind, there's really no option to do that. So I don't like that. I bring up a couple of comments. I think I did a Google search where up in Iowa, you know, they were trapped, and you look on the social media as well locally, and the same concern is there. So I do have a huge concern regarding the drive-through egress and the ingress as well. So if you do have an overflow of patrons that want to access it, I'm seeing that potentially, you know, you have a split between the parking lot there, or maybe they will curve around through the existing entrance to the marketplace as well. That will cut off traffic flow as well. So I know that, you know, we meet the requirements supposedly, but I just don't see that there as well. So that is a concern. And I guess two other comments that's more for the commissioners as well, is that in terms of the location of it, of this proposed location, as well as the existing Belton location as well, is that, you know, why do we need, again, I know this is not part of it, but I just don't see the need of having, I know you're shaking your head, but just a comment, so, all right. But initially right now, I think the egress and ingress of traffic flow, specifically around the drive-through, creates an issue.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. And Commissioner Crane.
Leo, the McDonald's in Clinton, Missouri is set up very much like this, and I've watched traffic flow through there on lake weekends. I mean, tremendous amount of traffic flow through there, and it seems to work out quite well.
I will say I've used that McDonald's there in Clinton, and I've had issues, as well as the same one in Sedalia as well, which there is an issue there as well.
Which restaurant in Sedalia?
The McDonald's.
The McDonald's.
Okay.
I'm there every other weekend picking
Well,
up the
and there's a
grandkids.
couple 50 highway or 65 highway. Okay, just curious.
Oh, the one right there, when the first slide or the second light when you get to there, so before you take the right to the State Fair.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, 50 highway.
Yep.
Thanks. All right. Other commissioners, comments, questions? Commissioner Meisky.
Have we, Jim, looked at like any kind of traffic study? The only way that you can get in here is, I guess, to the west off Johnson or 58. They're going into the Price Chopper parking lot. Now, I know coming out of Johnson here, you've got that light, but on the 58 side, you have no light or anything. That's going to add some more traffic to that, especially in, you know, people trying to make lefts and rights and everything out of there. Have we done any kind of traffic management?
Not specifically for the Taco Bell proposal. The traffic study that was done when the shopping center came in, and it anticipated development on the outlots.
Right.
So for example, along 58 Highway with the turn lanes, it anticipated not only the traffic for being generated by Price Chopper and the retail stores, but the ultimate traffic of the outlots. So the site was designed with development of the outlots in mind, and it always was planned for the Taco Bell site to be accessed exactly the way it's being accessed, which is off of a parking lot area. We did not want to see the access come off of the driveway in front of Price Chopper, and certainly didn't want to see it come off of Johnson or Fox Drive. So
Well, don't get me wrong. I
yeah, so
don't need
it is
another
as was initially
stoplight here.
planned.
We got enough stoplights right there. So I just didn't know if there's been any planning
But,
on that.
yeah, because the traffic study was done initially, we don't require it when the individual
Right.
tenants come in.
And Mr. Cataret, if I remember correctly, we obviously didn't know who might come into those sites for restaurants, but I believe they were pretty much intended or designed for fast food or restaurants that would have a fairly high degree of traffic.
That's correct.
So
The
it was-
outlot's
was
along
part of the
58
plan.
specifically.
Right.
There's a larger outlot
Yeah,
in
back
in
to
the
the
back site
east.
that was planned for more retail.
Right.
But the front lots were for higher traffic generators.
If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Hederett, switching back to the other page that actually shows the driveway layout in the building. Couple of observations that I would make over a long period of time. You know, we've had several drive-through situations in Raymore where you either had to circle the building twice or something, and frankly, I'll say, you know, this may not be the best plan ever anywhere, but for the lot, I like the idea that we've kept incoming and outgoing traffic off of Johnston Parkway and 58. I like the idea that the driveway basically circles half of the building once, and I also like the idea that you can get in and out of the drive-through without necessarily having to drive through Taco Bell's parking lot. So I think that actually, in my mind, contributes to pedestrian safety, if you know where you're going. I mean, there's an assumption there. And in my experience, you know, obviously the parking load at Price Chopper varies through the day, through the week, but typically I don't see a whole lot of cars parking out at the south end of Price Chopper's parking lot. So it does a little bit to ease my concerns about increased congestion of traffic there. Yeah, thank you. Other comments, questions from the commissioners? Quiet bunch. Anybody brave enough to make a motion on case 15014?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Crane?
I move that we accept staff proposed finding of facts and approve case 15014 Taco Bell site plan, subject to the 13 conditions set forth in the staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Crane and Mayor Kirkhoff. Let's see if I can read that back more or less accurately. Motion by Commissioner Crane, second by Mayor Kirkhoff, to accept staff proposed findings of fact on case 15014 Taco Bell site plan and approve with the 13 noted conditions. Sound right? Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this case? All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 6, I have 6 in favor. Opposed? And Commissioner Bowie, is that an? Yeah. 6 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions. And as is our custom, Commissioner Bowie and Commissioner Anderson, if you'd like, I think we've heard some of your concerns already. If you'd like to summarize for the record your concerns, please do that.
Sure, and again, my concern is the options in terms of the egress into the drive-through. Have issues and concern in terms of safety, in terms of cars able to exit the drive-through as needed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Commissioner Bowie?
I do second what Commissioner Leo brought up in terms of the drive and the just some of the safety involved with that. I've been to a number of Taco Bells, and I always see that as a problem in terms of Taco Bells. If you do want to change your mind, you can't turn around, you can't get out. And it becomes an issue, and it could become an issue in an emergency situation.
Right.
And I just, that's one of the main issues that I looked at. I didn't say it before because he voiced it himself.
Right, that's fair.
But that issue, along with, just some of the other general issues that are really not focused, we haven't really talked about in terms of, and there's nothing wrong with a Taco Bell and fast food restaurants, as was said before. They are this kind of scheduled or whatever to go up front on 58 Highway, but I'm just not sure that I'm in favor of it. I really haven't, that's where I'm at right now, and I don't want to give a yay,
Yeah.
and I'm just not there at this
Yeah,
point.
fair enough. We appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, well, that concludes case 15014, and since that case required a quorum to approve, and quorum would have been 5, we have 6 in favor, so that is approval of the site plan. Just to be clear on that. Thank you. We didn't want you to leave wondering. Moving along, the next case on our agenda this evening is case 15015, Fourth Amendment to the Creekmore Memorandum of Understanding. And this case will require a public hearing. And it's been a while since we've actually done an MOU, but Mr. Carteret, I assume that Cooper Land Development is the applicant for this case. And
That is correct, sir.
thank you. And so if the applicant would like to come forward to the podium and present your case, we'd be delighted to hear from you.
Good evening. Steve Warger with Warger Associates, offices at 1617 Swift, North Kansas City, Missouri, here on behalf of Cooper Land Development and the Creekmore subdivision. What we're talking about today is an MOU amendment for Westbrook, what we're calling 11th plat. The 11th plat is located north of 163rd Street, south of the first hole of the golf course, westerly of the clubhouse, and then to the, west of the clubhouse, and then east of Fox Ridge Drive where the creek goes through there, so it's basically just an open space in that area. This area, as you can see by the plan that's in front of you, initially when Cooper came in with this overall subdivision plat, they were looking at this more of a duplex area. And I believe probably 6-7 years ago, maybe somewhere in that range, we came back and changed that, requested for a single family, more of a villa type idea that they wanted to do in there. What this basically in this property, it's kind of a smaller area that obviously was more towards a multifamily or more towards the smaller units and the smaller houses potentially in that area. So what we've come back with now is a plat that is part of this MOU as far as trying to ask for some variance or some changes in the setback requirements for the lots that we had established previously in the overall MOU. And staff has made recommendation agreeing with all but 2 of them. And the 2 that they weren't in agreement with was one was the side yard, which we were requesting 5 foot from the 7.5. And at this point, I will tell you that we're okay with the 7.5. So
Okay.
now we're down to 1, and that's the front yard setback from the 25 that is normal there to 20. Again, part of that reason, again, like what we were talking, is it's kind of a cramped in area, and whether it's self-inflicted or not, it really doesn't matter, because it was a smaller area that was more for a multifamily type development. And to get the lots and the economy of getting the development going in that area, and the request by the different builders that have looked at this, we feel that 20 foot is necessary to be able to get the houses in there that they want to get in there. Most of the time, recently, I'd say most of the time, Creekmore has gone to the deal where they've pretty much sold almost the whole subdivision to one builder, other than Edgewood Fourth up there around the lake. But most of the rest of their influx or influence is from a particular builder that wants 20 lots, like in High Point, where you got one builder that's done High Point first, High Point second, High Point third, Westbrook ninth that goes along the back side of the 17th hole. I believe 20 of the 23 lots on that one were bought by one particular builder. So we're kind of trying to we're getting into a type of a niche here. I will say on Cooper's behalf, as far as this goes, we don't disagree normally with the 25-foot setback, but because it's just such a smaller little community there, and to make those buildings work. That's why we're asking for the 20-foot setback in the front.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions
Yeah.
after Jim's
Thank you,
staff
Mr.
report.
Warder. Well, you know, we'll call you back if
I'm
we
sure you will.
have more questions. Mr. Cataret, if you would, give us the staff report on case 15015, please.
Yes, sir, thank you. With the request for the Fourth Amendment to the Creekmore MOU, it's technically an amendment to the preliminary plan, which was initially approved by the city back in 2004.
Right. If I can interrupt, was that preliminary plan what was reflected on the very multicolor slide that we saw a minute ago?
Yes, sir. The one
Right.
that you're actually looking at here is the amended plan. As Mr. Warger indicated, it was amended for this particular track that's being considered tonight. So that
Okay.
was an amendment, I believe, in 2006.
But that's essentially the preliminary that the MOU
It is.
proposed.
Yes, sir. The
proposal
preliminary
would
plan and the
modify.
MOU go together.
Yeah.
So we're officially amending the preliminary plan, which does require a public hearing. So that's the
Right.
reason for the hearing this evening. So I do need to enter into the record the notice of publication that was made in the Journal, the Unified Development Code. The applicant did submit a request letter, the growth management plan, the staff report submitted to you this evening, the Creekmore development standards that I prepared for your review, as well as subdivision development standards that show development standards of different subdivisions within Raymore. And as Mr. Warger indicated, this amendment is specific to the Westbrook and Creekmore 11th plat. So anything that we would amend, if it does get approved, is limited to the 11th final plat. So at the specific, there were 5 items being requested. One has been eliminated tonight. The modification of the development standards include a reduction in the minimum lot size. So currently it's at 8,400 square feet. They're requesting 7,400 square feet. The minimum front setback, as Mr. Warger indicated, currently 25, requesting 20. The rear setback is currently 25. They're requesting 20. And then the side quarter setback, this would be on a quarter lot, currently at 20 foot, the request is to reduce to 15 feet. As indicated, the MOU approved back in 2004 has had 3 amendments that have been approved over the years. The last one was done back in 2007, and it was specific to the Edgewater phase of Creekmore. So as each phase of Creekmore, has been developed, the MOU created specific development standards for different types of houses. As Mr. Warger indicated, there's the standard detached single family, which is what Westbrook falls under, also referred to as normal single family. Then there's the villas and the patio lots, which is the Edgewater, Westbrook villas, the villages of Southern Hills. And then there's also duplex lots still existing within Creekmore. Those lots are planned for, if I can expand this out, are planned for the eastern side of the project. You'll see over here, the very east side with Madison Street here, there are still duplex areas included as part of the preliminary plan. The subject property and property to the east of the clubhouse were initially duplex, but were converted back to single family. And then the area where the villages of Southern Hills was initially proposed for multifamily, and that was changed. That was the first amendment, and it changed it to single family. I note that I did mention the request for the minimum lot size. The request was 7,400 square feet. Unless I was looking at the plat wrong, I believe the smallest lot size is about 7,834. So if we are looking to reduce the lot size, we may want to look to modify that and grant only to the 7,800 square foot. I note the reduction to the side quarter that's requested. We have also approved that request in Edgewater, the Village of Southern Hills, and Westbrook Villas. So it's consistent with what we have done in other phases. I do note regarding the front setback, all of Creekmore is established at a 25-foot front yard setback. And in fact, most of the subdivisions, the new subdivisions in Raymore are at 25 feet or the traditional 30. Only one subdivision has reduced the front yard setback to 20, and that's the Morning View subdivision. And as I note there, of course, that's a planned unit development, just like Creekmore. But the streets of that subdivision are private, and there are no sidewalks. And so you don't have the issue that I raised later about parking of vehicles. The side yard setback requirement looks like that's been eliminated, so I'll skip that part of the staff report. I do want to note that I think it is important when we look at specifically rear yard setback that this particular phase in Creekmore is completely surrounded by common area. So there's common area in the rear yard of every lot in the subdivision. And I think that's significant because if we reduce the rear yard setback at all, we're not encroaching a home closer to another home that may be behind it, around it. We're encroaching closer to common area, which is left open, and so we don't have the issue of privacy being invaded or something of that nature. I think that does weigh into staff's consideration of the rear yard setback request. The density of this property, as was indicated, when it was reduced from the two-family to single-family, density was obviously reduced. But overall, the density of the property does remain consistent with what was approved back in when the second amendment was done to the MOU back in 2006. Staff, has submitted proposed findings of fact, again, for your consideration on this request. And with a recommendation, most of my recommendations are usually pretty short. This one gets a little lengthy, but I do want to briefly go through a few of my comments because I think they are appropriate and important as to how I got to the staff recommendation. As you know, with the PUD, we have several planned unit developments in the city. I mentioned Morning View, Foxwood Springs is also a PUD, Alexander Creek. They're all very unique subdivisions. And the idea when coming in under a planned unit development was to allow the property owner flexibility in the design of the subdivision, the layout of the lots, the open space, the buildings, setbacks, et cetera. If there's some trade-off for the provision of amenities and, if you would, an excellent design for the subdivision. Creekmore's created a lot of positive things for the Raymore community with the golf course that's there. Already over 500 families have chosen to live in Creekmore, and that's since 2004 when the project was first approved. They, of course, have, as I mentioned, the golf course. There's the over 100-acre lake, the clubhouse, swimming pool, walking trails, tennis courts, fitness center. A lot of amenities have been provided in the subdivision. Overall, we have 54% open space, which is very considerable. Of course, that is included the golf course, but it's still open area and it provides separation between the homes. Initially, the subdivision was, again, approved. I believe the initial number was almost in the 1600s, and it's been amended down to about 1,400 families. So that, the subdivision is, if you count the number of lots that are developed, is closing in about the halfway point of development. About half of it has been developed now. But there remains, hundreds of acres available for development to occur. The Fourth Amendment, as I looked at it, it really was an attempt by the developer to continue with the general lot sizes, setbacks that are common throughout the subdivision. But there are two specific modifications, again, that, in staff's opinion, they don't currently exist in the neighborhood, and that's where staff had concerns. And one of them was side yard setback, and that's already been resolved. But the front yard setback reduction to 20 feet, we do have concerns with as staff. And again, as I talked, the most important one is the possibility of a vehicle parked in a driveway that would overhang the sidewalk. That's a violation of city ordinance if any part of the vehicle extends over the sidewalk. And we do want sidewalk on all these lots. The only thing that I would state there, and I understand you have a certain size home we're trying to fit on the property, is perhaps look at, they're already requesting to reduce the rear yard setback to 20 feet. if the overall design of buildings for that property doesn't work in the envelope, I think it'd be much better to keep the front yard setback where it is and reduce the rear yard setback even more. It just seemed to make a little bit more sense to, for us. You know, I know individuals want to have rear yard, you know, areas, but again, we have some common area behind them that at least provides that open feeling. But maintaining the 25-foot setback was pretty important to the city staff. We do support the other request, the request to reduce the minimum lot size. Again, only 6 of the lots fell below the 8,400, and only 1 of them fell below 8,000. So we thought that was a very reasonable request. The lots are still consistent with lots at High Point and Edgewater and Southern Hills. We also supported the rear yard setback reduction, as well as the side yard setback for quarter lots. So to sum it up, city staff does recommend the commission accept the staff proposed findings for the Fourth Amendment to the Creekmore MOU to the city council with a recommendation of approval. We recommend approval to modify the minimum lot size requirement down to 7,800 square feet. Recommend approval to modify rear yard setback down to 20. Recommend approval to modify the minimum quarter lot side yard setback down to 15. And then we do recommend denial to modify the minimum front yard setback from 25 down to 20. So again, included with your packet was a specific request letter from Mr. Warner representing Cooper, as well as the actual Fourth Amendment document that would show the table that, if approved, would be inserted into the MOU for the subdivision. I didn't really go over, but I provided all the development standards for the different phases in Creekmore. I thought that was could be helpful to look at what we currently have existing in the different phases, as well as the table you've seen on other projects, but it's the overall development standards that we have in different subdivisions throughout the city and what we have granted as far as deviations. So hopefully that was helpful. That would conclude staff report at this time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Cataret, and I did find that very helpful. Always appreciate the very thorough research that you provide with these case packets for us. I think there's probably no reason why I shouldn't go ahead and open the public hearing on case 15015, Fourth Amendment to the Creekmore Memorandum of Understanding, and if anyone in the public would like to speak on this case, please come forward to the podium. State your name and address for the record. And seeing none, one of my rare opportunities to flop the gavel, and we'll close the public hearing, open the floor for discussion, questions, et cetera, from the commissioners. Commissioner Anderson?
Mr. Chair, just need some clarification, because I'm thinking I'm hearing two different things, that you're recommending a denial for both the minimum front setback as well as the minimum side setback.
When the staff report was prepared, the request for the side yard setback was to reduce it down to 5 foot. I heard the applicant earlier say that they are no longer making that request, that they are okay with the 7.5 foot. So that item can really be stricken from the request. So, but we are recommending denial of the reduction to the front yard setback.
Okay, so leave it at 25 feet.
Right.
Yes.
And
Okay.
Mr. Zur, we can dig a little deeper as we go, but the way I'm hearing that, with the application as presented to us, we would still deny the reduction of side yard setback 7.5 down to 5, and we're all in agreement on that.
I would say they have not filed any formal
Right.
withdrawal of that
Should.
particular portion of the application. So my thought would be make it clear on the record, and that is, at the applicant's suggestion or acquiescence, the
Yeah.
commission has decided not to approve the 7.5 down to
Right.
5 foot side yard setback.
And we can work specifics of that as we actually get a motion, but I just wanted to make sure that what went on to city council was clear. And it doesn't really take much to throw us off a little bit. Right, right. Thank you. That's
ask,
true.
yeah, just asking. I like my recommendations to be in the positive, so when I see a denial there, it sets off a flag there,
Yeah.
so.
This, staff's recommendations on this case are a little different than the common, yes, and very thorough. Other commissioners, questions, comments? Commissioner Meiske?
Mr. Chair, I've got a few questions. I'm not sure who to address them to.
No,
So,
why don't you start off, and we'll bring Mr. Warder back if we need
Yeah.
to. You can address it to
First,
Mr. Carteret to start.
My comment on the morning view with the side, no sidewalks and the parking and the driveways and all. My parents lived there for years, and I totally disagree with a short, setback with that. We need that extra room, because every time we went over there, there was no parking. I mean, there's just, you can't put two cars in the parking, in the driveway. Okay, my questions really are, has this been approved by the city as far as the emergency vehicles, big fire trucks and stuff getting around the cul-de-sacs? Okay.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
wasn't
Eames.
sure. It just said it met city code, but I wasn't sure if that was part of it. Okay. Okay, thank you. Second thing is the floodplain. I know it's a 100-year floodplain. However, does building in this area change that 100-year floodplain any?
Well,
Commissioner Meiske, can I stop you real quickly on that one?
Yeah.
We have two applications that are before us this evening. The first one is related to the MOU, which is simply an alteration of the building standards for side yard, front yard, backyard setbacks.
Okay.
The next one that you're going to have, the next application that you're going to consider is going to be the 11th final plat
Okay.
for these particular lots. I think some of your questions might be overlapping between the
Okay.
two cases here.
So I'm too early on that. Okay, well, I'm done.
right. No, that's good, but I think, Mr. Zur, if I'm hearing your advice correctly, the case at hand really focuses on whether we agree with staff's recommendations on the proposed changes to the MOU, and that's I think pretty well summarized there on page 8 of the staff report.
That's correct. In that particular review, you did have legislative discretion with regard to the alterations of the MOU, which is a little bit different than the next case that will come up, which is somewhat
Right.
more of an administrative review, and therefore, if all of the holes are filled, then it's appropriate to make the approval.
Right.
Okay?
Definitely, the two are interrelated, though, because what we decide here drives the next case.
Absolutely correct, which is why I'm not trying to shoot down Commissioner
No,
Meiske
I
with
agree.
regard to his line of questioning. I just want to make sure we stay focused on which case we're dealing with, one to the other.
Right. I agree, and thank you, Mr. Zur. So, Commissioner Meiske, any further questions for the moment? Okay. Well, it may still, your thoughts on approving or denying the proposed changes to the MOU definitely have consequences in the next case. So, enough said. Other questions, comments from the commission?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Anderson.
if you would allow me, I would like to make a motion.
Oh, of course I will.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve staff proposed finding of fact and forward the Fourth Amendment to the Creekmore MOU or the Memorandum of Understanding to the City Council with the following 4 recommendations, inclusive of the applicant's withdrawal of the minimum side setback.
I don't think he's actually withdrawn it.
Why, you're not withdrawing?
No, but he is okay with the notion of the recommendation of a denial with regard to that
Gotcha.
7.5 foot to 5 foot.
So I'll change the motion to state that recommend accept the staff proposed finding of fact and for the Fourth Amendment to the Creekmore MOU to the City Council with the following 5 recommendations.
And what are those 5, if you would, just briefly, please?
One is the recommend approval of the minimum lot size.
Okay,
Recommendation of approval to modify the minimum rear setback. Recommend approval to modify the minimum corner lot side yard setback. And recommend denial, it hurts me to say that, to modify the minimum front yard setback. And recommend denial to modify the minimum side setback requirement as presented.
nicely stated. Thank you, Commissioner
Second.
Anderson. Do I hear a second? Was that you? Thank you. Mayor Kirkhoff. Okay, so at this point, I think it's probably appropriate simply to discuss the motion if necessary before we take a vote.
May I step in?
Oh, of course.
Real quickly, and Commissioner Anderson, I think you did a great job with regard to that proposed recommendation. What I want to make sure that you understand, and the reason I'm suggesting that this commission take this particular action, A, the applicant has not withdrawn his request for that particular side yard minimum setback, and B, depending upon what this commission does, this will still go to the city council for final
Right.
approval, and if he had withdrawn it, he would not be able to make that particular argument to the city council level. He may still be able to preserve that and convince the city council that, hey, the recommendation of the planning commission, and all things considered, it is appropriate for them to accept that side yard setback at the top. So I want to make sure we understand the reasoning behind my rationale for having you
I want to
include
make
that.
sure that the applicant, are you in agreement with it? Sound like he is. Okay.
And if I may, I think I can still make a comment on this particular motion at this time. So I will say, I always look for a win-win. I find myself going in 2 opposite directions on different parts of this case. One is primarily that I am concerned about setting a bad precedent if we were to go against staff recommendation and recommend approval of reducing the minimum front yard setback. That does, in my mind, have a lot broader ramifications than just Westbrook 11th. On the flip side, Mr. Carteret, and if it's still appropriate to hear your comments on this, on the flip side, I do note that this is a small subdivision, not really anything going through, and so I don't see a whole lot of sidewalk traffic here except just internal within the subdivision. If it were a larger subdivision or a pass-through, I would be much more concerned specifically. I think the dilemma that I have here in just the next couple of minutes is, in the big picture, reducing the front yard setback is a big concern to me. If I could deal with this subdivision in isolation and assure myself that that precedent would not come back to haunt us, I probably would feel better about the reduction in front yard setback. And I don't know, Mr. Zur, can I still hear Mr. Carteret's comments on that?
Yeah, I certainly understand your comment. It is, and I use the terms a lot, about being isolated, being separated from, you don't have through traffic going through, et cetera. In this case, your comment on pedestrian traffic is probably valid in that you wouldn't have other pedestrians going through the subdivision, not likely to, as far as on a walk. But we still, from a city standpoint, we like to see all areas connected to the overall network. So if we were to say sidewalks wouldn't be required in this little phase, we're denying potential residents of that area from being connected through sidewalks to the rest of the neighborhood and the rest of the city. So while I agree we don't have the individuals crossing through, connectivity type issue, we still want to see all lots of the city have access to the sidewalk network, even if they are isolated, as I do agree these are isolated.
Yeah, we've worked very hard in the last couple of years on connectivity and sidewalks, though, and that was one of the goals of the growth management plan as well.
Absolutely, yeah. The sidewalk's clearly a very important initiative in the city for us to have.
Kind of hit a nerve. It's not a simple question. Mr. Zur, if I could also ask before we put the current motion to a vote, so we have in city code now several options, several directives. We're directed to either approve a motion of recommendation, or failing that, approve a motion of denial, or failing that, it goes to city council with no recommendation. I find this particular case a little more complicated because the motion is to recommend approval of 3 points, denial of 2 points. I have no idea where we're going to go with this, but I think probably it makes sense to take a vote on it unless someone wishes to amend the motion on the floor, and we'll see what happens after that.
Yeah,
right?
that'd be correct, your Chairman. I want to make sure I have included the reference. I think Commissioner Anderson made reference that we were incorporating the staff's recommendations. That recommendation with regard to the minimum lot size would be at the 7,800, not the 7,400 as requested by the applicant. Is that correct, Commissioner Anderson?
Well, here's, okay, applicant requested 7,400, staff's recommendations are reduced to 7,800. So that's what I take the motion to be.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Zur. Anything else?
Is that good as far as the second as well, too? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so
Chairman.
we have a motion on the floor. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Chairman. If you really wanted to, you could probably do straw poll across everyone if you wanted to try and work through each one of the 4 or 5 that are of issue at this point. But I would hope that members of this commission would have raised issue with regard to the proposed motion and indicate to Commissioner Anderson that, hey, we would prefer to be able to take these piecemeal as opposed to all at once.
In this case, I think, and I appreciate your comment, I did think about that, but I think in this case, let's try this. We've got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Anderson, second by Mayor Kirkhoff on case 15015, Fourth Amendment to Creekmore MOU. And I'll probably paraphrase a little bit, but the motion, I believe, is to, it would be nice if I could read my writing here, accept staff proposed findings of fact on the case, forward to City Council with 5 recommendations. These are the recommendations as noted at the bottom of page 8, and that is to recommend approval of the first 3 items in the request, to recommend denial of the last 2 items in the request, and we'll see how this vote goes, and then we'll take action after that if necessary. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion as stated, raise a hand, please. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My gosh. Okay, Mr. Zur, you can be relieved now. We have a vote of 8 in favor of the motion, none opposed, no abstentions. So our recommendation goes forward to City Council to recommend approval of the first 3 points, denial of the last 2.
I will sleep well.
And that takes us on to...
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Eanes, yes.
We're going with 8,400 down to 7,800?
That's
or is it
correct.
7,400?
No, 7,800
Okay.
as stated.
That was a little confusing
Yeah.
to me.
No,
Okay.
that's, yeah, much better to ask the question.
Okay.
The recommendations, the vote of the commission was in agreement with staff's recommendations, which included reducing 8,400 to 7,800 only. Okay, and not that I really necessarily probably need to explain myself, but one of the reasons for my comments there in discussion of the motion was simply so it's on the record going forward to city council. And our next case is case 15011. And Mr. Zer, I'm pretty sure you're gonna have to give us some legal advice on how to handle this, but it may be fine. This is Westbrook at Creekmore, the 11th final plat for lots 311 through 333 and tract FF. And Mr. Warger, if you would, come forward and present this case to us.
Yes, sir. All right, based on the previous action, as far as with the not amending the MOU on the front yard setbacks, I believe this plat does show the 20. We'd like to go forward, obviously, with that and make sure that the plat is approved, knowing that we will adjust that to the 25 so that we can at least get that final plat action tonight for Westbrook 11th. And to answer it while I'm here, since I know the question on the floodplain is coming up, the floodplain information was considered and I actually was involved in that previously with a previous firm when Creekmore first went through here. With more detailed survey and some more detailed study, none of the lots per city requirements are within the 100-year floodplain. And we also do submit, which we have submitted and sent a review with FEMA as far as the 100-year floodplain, and get what they call a LOMAR F, which is a letter of map revision based on fill. And so those will be, and what we will do is state that for all the lots, and we've made that submittal for all the lots within Westbrook 11th. So we're comfortable that we don't have a problem or an issue with that, but I understand you bringing that up.
Good.
And other than that, I think everything else was in conformance with what code-wise with that. So I'll be here to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warger. And Mr. Cataret, if you would, give us the staff report on case 15011, please.
Yes, sir, thank you. So the Westbrook at Creekmore, the 11th final plat is proposed for 23 lots. So on your screen, I've shown the overlay of the proposed plat and how it fits in with the 163rd Street, Fox Ridge, and then the first hole of the golf course. And as was indicated, there is also a stream along through the common area to the west of the proposed lots. So included some photographs of the property if you were able to go by and take a view of it. The overall plat size, a little over 12 acres. Overall density is right around 1.8 acres, so well below what is the maximum density for the subdivision. I included, regarding the development standards, both the current and what was proposed as part of the MOU. I do note that the plat it's slightly modified from the approved preliminary plat. Again, when it was modified to single family, the overall street design is as you see it today. So generally, they have not modified what was approved as part of the preliminary plan with the final plat. Street names, we'll have to have before if the plat's approved, before it's recorded, we'll have to have the suffix for the streets revised. Any cul-de-sac either has to be a court or a cove now under a code. It just helps with our addressing a 911 system. I do note that this particular phase will be incorporating a new teardrop design for our cul-de-sacs. So our cul-de-sacs will no longer just be all asphalt, but it'll actually be a feature in the middle of the cul-de-sac to eliminate some of the impervious pavement that we have. We're trying to make a reduction there regarding overall stormwater quality in our city. South Metro has reviewed the plat. They are okay with the subdivision plat. They always make the comment when there's only one access. It does provide them some angst. Of course, we are limited to 23 lots, but there is good access right along 163rd Street to a lot of the properties, and they always just make a note of it, when there's only one access point. If something would happen right at the immediate entrance, it may prove some difficulty in getting access to the back. Staff has submitted proposed findings. And we do recommend the commission accept those findings and forward this case to the council with a recommendation of approval. We do have 4 conditions with that recommendation. The first is that the plat, as you see it, is contingent upon approval of the MOU as requested by the applicant. So if any part of their request is denied by council, such as the front yard setback, just as one example, they will have to modify the plat to comply with whatever decision the council ultimately makes. I mentioned that the suffix for the 2 roadway names need to be revised before any plat's recorded. The city engineer is requesting minimum low opening elevations for any lot adjacent to the floodplain. And then there's a reference on the plat document to tracks D, D, and E. It simply needs to be changed to tract FF. Those are items that we ensure before the plat is recorded or taken care of. But staff does recommend approval. Mr. Eads did submit a memorandum regarding facilities that are provided for this particular phase of the subdivision. So that concludes staff comments.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cataret. And Mr. Zur, I think I heard what Mr. Cataret said to the extent that if any part of the MOU amendment failed, the plat would have to be modified to conform to the approved MOU. Is that correct?
That is correct. You could approve this evening the final plat subject to the staff's conditions. The staff's conditions will include within it the requirement that the MOU adjustments be met, or whatever is approved by the city council will ultimately need to be met according to that 4th Amendment.
So on page 8 of the staff report, the first staff recommendation currently says proposed 4th Amendment to the Creekmore MOU is approved by city council. Is that sufficient, or might we need to change that condition?
We don't know what is going to happen at the city council level. You are simply making a recommendation to that body.
Okay.
Ultimately,
So
they
our
will have-
recommendation is fine.
Right.
Thank you, sir. Okay, great. Yep. Okay, thank you. Commissioners, this does not require a public hearing, by the way, so commissioners, do you have comments, questions about the final plat? Commissioner Anderson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Zur, just for clarification on the first condition regarding the MOU. So if the council rejects any one of the 5 conditions, the applicant will have to resubmit? Okay.
Yes, your recommendation will be that the approval go to the city council only with the approval of the MOU or whatever they approve as far as the MOU is concerned.
In its entirety.
Right. And if they need to adjust their final plat in light of the final council determination, what you are doing is you're putting the little impingement on it for approval of the 4th Amendment when it goes to the city council, without actually tripping up and stopping the process of the final plat moving forward for city council consideration at the same time that the MOU is, or consecutively.
Right. Yep, thank you, Mr. Zur. Mr. Haynes, just, did you have concerns that you wanted to voice to the commission?
No, I was just reviewing what Mr. Cataret's staff comments on page 5 regarding the lot size.
Uh-huh.
I guess all of that was changed based on the memorandum of understanding that we previously approved. So
Right.
all of those dimensions were changed.
True.
Per that.
Yeah, and based on what Mr. Zur just told us, we're, in this case, we are the recommending body. We are merely making a recommendation to city council, and so not that I want to pass on a nightmare to them, but I'm quite confident that the details still have another opportunity to get sorted out.
And despite your recommendation, it might still get to the city council level, and the applicant may well inspire the council to accept their original recommendations and their original MOUs, which means nothing needs to change with regard to your final plat
Yeah.
before you.
That's beyond us tonight, so we will deal with case 15011, final plat that's before us. Any other commissioners have questions, comments? Commissioner
Mr.
Meiske?
Chair, I've got one left.
if I don't get shut down on this one. My question is, since this subdivision here is, I'm gonna use the term landlocked, okay?
Yeah.
And since the setbacks are so narrow, what kind of easements does the utilities have to get between houses and stuff to get back to backyards and things? I don't know.
Just to clear a picture in my head, not subdivision, but plat.
Oh, plat, I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Part of a subdivision.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The plat drawing that was submitted to you shows a 7.5-foot side yard setback on each lot, so providing a total of 50 feet to get from the front to the rear yard setback and the rear yard easement. There was some concern about reducing the side yard setback to 5. We would have had to have reduced the easements to 5, which is the minimum width the city would have on side yard is 5 foot, so it would have been okay. But right now, you see 7.5 foot on each lot side yard, so it provides a nice 15-foot easement to get from the front to the back.
Right.
And then there's a 20-foot easement in the back, the rear property
Okay.
line as well.
Well, okay, that was my problem, is how does the utility company get back there to that back lot, all the way back there in the corner, you know? Especially when you've got lot, let's see, where is that? You pointed it out too. 323. You got a 25-foot
Oh, yeah.
road frontage there,
Right.
street frontage there, is all you got
Oh, right.
to get any place. So, you know, that was,
Right.
I mean, we've looked at all that, so
Yeah.
you're okay with,
Yes, yeah,
With all
there
the-
is adequate
okay.
access there, and then you'll see here the easements that do surround the property, so
Yeah.
they have adequate area for the provision of utilities to the site.
okay.
Yep.
All right, that's all I had, thank you.
Are you okay with that, Mr. Warger? Are you okay with that explanation?
Yes, all the easements are standard that we have in any other subdivision within, or any other plat, not
Plat.
subdivision, plat we have within the subdivision. Okay.
Now we've got you speaking. Thank you,
Man,
thank you,
I'm-
Mr. Thank you,
Bad
Mr.
habits are
Warger.
just flowing, aren't they?
Yeah. Okay. Other questions or comments?
Nope, that's all I had.
All right, so, I think based on discussion, I might as well just try this. I would like to make a motion to accept staff proposed findings of fact and forward case 15011 Westbrook at Creekmore 11th final plat to City Council with the recommendation of approval, subject to the following 4 conditions. Number 1, proposed Fourth Amendment to the Creekmore MOU is approved by City Council. Number 2, street names, suffix of Buckingham Circle and Bursey Circle are changed to Court or Cove prior to recording the plat. Number 3, minimum low opening elevations are provided for any lot adjacent to the floodplain prior to recording of the plat. And number 4, references to tracts DD and EE under common property on page 1 of 2 of the plat be changed to tract FF.
Second.
Is that Mayor Kirkhoff? Oh, Commissioner Crane? Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Faulkner, second by Commissioner Crane to accept staff proposed findings of fact, forward the case to City Council with the recommendation of approval, subject to the 4 conditions noted. Is there any further discussion on this case? All those in favor, raise a hand, please. Thank you, and that's 8 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warger. And that takes us in our agenda this evening to the city council report. Mr. Zur.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to provide the city council report this evening. I did have the opportunity to speak with Mr. Willarth in my office regarding the July 13th, 2015 city council meeting. At that meeting, he identified one item which may be of interest to you based upon your prior review and involvement. That item was the Willow Hills Lot 12 rezoning, which they had their first public reading for and public hearing. It was approved by a vote of 8-0, so unanimous vote by the city council. It will have its second reading, I believe, at the next city council meeting. That is the only item that Mr. Willarth identified as having any substantial impact upon this commission.
Thank you, Mr. Zur. And Mr. Cataret, if you would like to continue with the staff report, please.
Yes, sir. The next meeting of the commission is scheduled for August 4th. We do have one item on the agenda. It is a public hearing. It will be the 22nd Amendment to the Unified Development Code. These are the proposed amendments coming out of your 2015 annual review of the Unified Development Code. So that's the only item we currently have scheduled on the agenda. We do not have anything currently scheduled for August 18th, but we'll leave that meeting date open, and we'll discuss that on August 4th.
Till next meeting.
Yes.
Sounds great.
Coming up in September then, your first meeting in September will be your annual review of the capital improvement program for the city, when the city manager, Jim Fearborn, will be here to go over that capital improvement program with you. You do make a recommendation on that document to our city council, because that document, specifically the first year of that capital improvement program, is part of the annual budget. So it is part of the council's ultimate review of the budget for the city. So that'll be your first meeting in September.
And if I may add, since we've got some newer commissioners now, that gives the Planning and Zoning Commission an opportunity to look for general directions from the growth management plan and see if we're actually incorporating or moving forward to implement some of those goals with money. The CIP is where the money comes in.
Thank you,
Anything
sir.
else, Mr. Carteret?
That's all I have this evening.
Thank you. I'll open the floor for public comment, and seeing none, we'll close public comments and move on to commission member comment. And Mayor Kirkhoff, I'm so happy to see you this evening. I think I'll start with commission member comment from the mayor.
Nothing tonight.
Secretary Crane.
No comment.
I'm going to do this backwards tonight. Vice Chair Pfizer.
No comment.
Commissioner Anderson.
I have no comment, but I do have a question.
Well, that's fine. I'm going to count it as a comment since
Okay. Regarding which the Ridgeway Villas at the Legends, is that construction on hold, or is it really no activity due to the weather?
This explanation could take a while. Now, the project it's not on hold. The weather has affected the project. It's had some difficulties since it started due to the weather, but the project is moving forward. They're attempting to construct all 56 units at one time. We would have preferred to work a little bit better in phases, but they got construction going on all buildings at one time. They're at different, levels of completion on each building, but it is still an active site, so.
Wow. Okay. Anything else? No. Commissioner Berenson.
No comment.
Commissioner Maisky.
I have a question.
That's great. I'm going to count it as a comment. Thank you.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
With all the housing obviously building up here, the streets, getting put in and everything, does the city periodically do any kind of audit to determine how much help they need, like for winter snow and ice removal, things like that? Because obviously, we're putting in more streets, which is going to take more time to clean off, do we need more equipment? Do we need, I don't know who to address this to.
Well, I'm thinking Mr. Eanes would probably like to like to toss that to our city engineer, Mr. Krass, but if any of staff wants to address, please do.
I'll make an attempt. Yes, we look at staffing levels based on lane miles each year.
Okay.
So with the growth of the city as it is, current staffing levels will handle, snow plowing and maintenance of streets and
Okay.
things like of that nature.
Well, I was just curious, because
No,
we
that's
keep
a-
adding more streets, and, obviously, if we get inclement weather, then it's gonna take more time to, clean off, and then you have the emergency vehicles trying to get in and out of these streets and prioritize them and stuff. So that's my only comment. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good question. Commissioner Bowie?
No comment.
Okay, well, I'm not going to try to make up for the rest of you. I do have a couple of comments, and in no particular order here, just a couple of things that caught my eye as I was reading through. So, Mr. Carteret, I think if it's okay, you may or may not have seen an article in the Kansas City Star. I'd like to, I don't know, can I add that to the record or something? And I won't read the whole thing, but this was page A11 of the Kansas City Star on July 11th. It's Steve Paul's commentary on the opinion page, and the headline reads, "A Tale of Two Design Documents in the City." And I will say, fortunately, they're not talking about Raymore. But at any rate, they're talking about a development lawyer. So if your ears are burning a little bit, a development lawyer named Jim Bowers. I don't know if you know Mr. Bowers, Esquire, or not. But anyway, was, I guess, at one point was arguing before a city council, this is Kansas City City Council Committee, in favor of loosening proposed design standards along the city's parkway and boulevards. And the gist of this was he was arguing that there were already some exceptions, and as the newspaper columnist says, in other words, the lawyer implied we should have the right to do as badly as this. In other words, to propagate the sins. And I guess this was a new ordinance up for consideration that had been discussed for a couple of years, approved by Parks Commissioners, and their City Planning Commission had passed it the day before. The lawyer and a group of mostly Northland developers submitted a substitute ordinance that eliminated at least 5 significant guidelines and caused this discussion. And as it goes, this, I think, to me, one of the reasons it struck a nerve was our discussions, Mr. Carteret, about highway frontage and orientation of businesses and so forth. But at any rate, the columnist, well, I guess I'll quote Jeffrey Williams, the city's thoughtful planning director, pledged to work toward further compromise in the next week. The columnist says here, if anything, design guidelines should err on the side of preserving one of the best ideas Kansas City ever offered. And also talked about restoring blighted areas, Troost Overlay District. There's really quite a bit of meat in this. And, I found a few. The goals include promoting density and a wide variety of uses, creating a sense of place, embracing authenticity and historical preservation, and encouraging the idea that each site adds value to the overall corridor and the whole becomes a cohesively developed urban street. And so I just thought this was quite a good article, and I appreciate you indulging me. I promise you I didn't read the whole thing verbatim, but will be part of the record. The other, hopefully you did see in the APA magazine, the planning magazine for July 2015, on page 48, and Commissioner Anderson, I was thinking of you as I read this. The headline's called "A Plea for Buildings That Fit In," and of course we've had discussions more recently about design of the buildings, compatibility versus businesses that have their own trademark designs. And so I don't necessarily feel compelled to read as much of this, but at any rate, I thought that was a very good article, page 48 of the July 2015 APA Planning Magazine. So if you haven't spotted that, I'd ask that you take a look at that and consider it, because I suspect that going forward, we'll have further discussions on that here in the Planning and Zoning Commission. And as always, I want to thank city staff, Mr. Carteret. Your research on the cases this evening, I thought, was very thorough, well thought out, and quite frankly, I think it was very helpful to the commission. You know, we think for ourselves. Sometimes we do pay attention. Mr. Zur, thank you for the legal advice. It was one of the trickier cases, the MOU. And Mr. Eanes, thank you for your thoughtful comments this evening as well. If any commissioners want to say anything else, I'm fine with that. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, and I think I heard motion by Commissioner Anderson, second by Commissioner Berenson to adjourn. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 2, 3, 4, and I can count to 8. Thank you all, gentlemen and lady. Oh yeah, microphones.